Okay, so I'm going to try something new. I'm going to read one of my books online. Um, so this is Rome's Audacious Claim. It is subtitled, Should Every Christian Be Subject to the Pope? And the reason it was written was to address Rome's claim that the Pope has full, supreme, and universal authority over the whole church. Um, so here's how it begins. Chapter 1 is called Rome's Audacious Claim and kind of explains it. So here we go. The Roman Catholic Church claims authority over you and every other Christian and church on the face of the earth. I find that claim audacious. Rome's audacious claim is known to theologians as papal primacy. Father John Trigilio, Jr., the president of the Confraternity of Catholic Clergy and a noted Roman Catholic apologist, quotes the First Vatican Council in defining papal primacy. I'm not very well prepared for this, am I? I hope my daughter's able to do good corrections on this video. All the faithful of Christ, this is a quote from that Father John Trigilio, all the faithful of Christ must believe that the apostolic see, that would be Rome, and the Roman pontiff hold primacy over the whole world, and that the pontiff of Rome himself is the successor of the blessed Peter, the chief of the apostles, and is the true vicar of Christ and head of the whole church in faith and teacher of all Christians. That's what was taught at Vatican I. With these words, the Catholic Church claims that the Pope, quote, the pontiff of Rome, is the head of your church and your faith and is your teacher. Most non-Catholic Christians find this claim ludicrous, so they simply dismiss it. They go about the business of following Jesus and participating in their particular Christian tradition without a further thought. Times are changing, though. The information age is upon us, and Christians are lapping up information like never before. Some of that information is the argument of Roman Catholic apologists that they can trace the universal authority of the Bishop of Rome through history back to the apostles and even to Jesus himself. There is a whole industry devoted to converting evangelicals to Catholicism. Scott Hahn is surely the champion of these apologists. His ministry's web and reviews on Amazon, 92% of which have 4 or 5 stars. To get an idea of how many that is, the popular Protestant, the Complete Bible Answer book, he was a Protestant, and it only has 135 reviews. How's that for deviating from the text and giving explanations? So, okay, moving on. On a personal note, I'm among the most proselytized non-Catholics on earth. Certain that early Christian history testifies against Protestantism so strongly that anyone who studies the early church fathers will become Roman Catholic. Admittedly, early Christian history does testify against many Protestant doctrines, but the earliest church fathers also witness against many Roman Catholic doctrines. Perhaps the most important of those is papal primacy. Perhaps that is why, despite their efforts and audience, these apologists have had little success. The exodus of Catholics to Protestantism is far greater than the conversion of Protestants to Catholicism. 15% of those raised Catholic are now Protestant, whereas only 3% of those raised Protestant are now Catholic. I got those statistics from the Pew Forum. I believe it's, let me check this. Well, I don't have I have to go to the bibliography to find the URL for that. But if you look up Pew Forum, you can find it, and you can look up all kinds of statistics on Protestants and Catholics. Okay, now back to the text. Subheading Vatican II. Papal primacy is not just a relic of the past, it is still Roman Catholic dogma. From 1962 to 1965, the Roman Catholic Church held a Second Vatican Council to, quote, make the message of faith more relevant to people in the 20th. Butler wrote, the Second Vatican Council expresses the mind of the church for today. Now, of course, in the book, I have the references down. Starting tomorrow, you'll be able to get the Kindle version of Rome's Audacious Claim free on Amazon, so you might be interested in that. The council softened many Roman Catholic doctrines, so much so that Vatican II prompted its own exodus of longtime Roman Catholics. My own father left the Roman Catholic Church some years after Vatican II as the changes decreed there began to take effect in local parishes. Papal primacy, however, was not softened at all. Toward the end of the council, Pope Paul VI issued the, quote, dogmatic constitution of the church, unquote, better known by its Latin title, Lumen Gentium. In it, he told the world, the Pope's power of primacy over all, both pastors and faithful, remains whole and intact. In virtue of his office, that is, as vicar of Christ and pastor of the whole church, the Roman pontiff has full, supreme, and universal power over the church, and he was always free to exercise this power. So that's from Vatican II, and it was a decree of Pope Paul VI. Good morning, Len. Vatican II expressly confirmed papal primacy without retreat. The Pope's primacy is over all, leaders and congregations alike, and it remains whole and intact, at least in the eyes of the Roman Catholic Church. To this day, the Catechism of the Catholic Church includes the wording of the Lumen Gentium almost verbatim. Obviously, the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church are aware that most of the world's Christians reject his authority. As a result, Vatican II had to provide guidelines to determine which of those who reject the Pope's authority are to be called Christians. Vatican I, held from 1869 to 1870, was not nearly so gracious. If then any should deny that it is by the institution of Christ, the Lord, and by divine right, that Blessed Peter should have a perpetual line of successors in the primacy over the universal church, or that the Roman pontiff is the successor of Blessed Peter in this primacy, let him be anathema. So I'm going to drink some water and read that quote again, and hope my daughter can cut this part out. Okay, let's try that again. So this is the quote. It's from Vatican I. If then any should deny that it is by the institution of Christ the Lord and by divine right that Blessed Peter should have a perpetual line of successors in the primacy over the universal church, or that the Roman pontiff is the successor of Blessed Peter in this primacy, let him be anathema, unquote. We will not address papal infallibility in this book. Once we establish that the doctrine of papal primacy was neither early nor ever universally accepted, the doctrine of infallibility disappears with it. In fact, it crumbles upon itself already. All councils that the Roman Catholic Church defines as ecumenical are infallible. In the book, I give a reference for that. Talking, I can't give it to you. Vatican Councils 1 and 2 are both ecumenical, and they contradict each other on this matter. Are those who reject Rome's audacious claim anathema, or are they brothers? Of course, the contradiction between Vatican I and Vatican II is apparent to Roman Catholics as well. The Eternal Word television network argues that there is no contradiction, but they fail to compare Vatican I's anathematization of those who reject papal primacy with the term separated brethren used at Vatican II. CatholicApologetics.info denies the infallibility of Vatican II because it was a, quote, pastoral council rather than a, quote, doctrinal one. This ignores the fact that any council deemed ecumenical by the Roman Catholic Church, Most Holy Family Monastery, unquote, gives translations of Pope John XXIII's opening speech to establish that he fully intended for Vatican II to be infallible. So obviously I give a reference in the book for that so you can look it up. In this book, we will try to spare the Roman Church the difficult determination of which Vatican councils are infallible and which non-Roman Catholics are brethren. Once we establish that Jesus did not give supreme authority to Peter, and that Peter did not pass supreme authority on to the Bishop of Rome, the doctrine of infallibility will fall with the doctrine of papal primacy. We will resort to both scripture and history to refute their claim, because Roman Catholic apologists argue from both sources. Many of my readers will be familiar with the scriptures, but most will not be familiar with early Christian history. Therefore, we will begin by telling the story of how the Roman Catholic Church rose to power, how the Roman bishop became known as the Pope, and how he came to claim supreme authority over every Christian on earth. To make such a claim requires great audacity, because all other churches descended from apostolic times have consistently rejected Rome's claim to full, supreme, and universal power. This includes all the churches mentioned in the New Testament, most of whom are part of what are now known as the Eastern Orthodox churches. We will also touch on the churches descended from apostolic times that exist in Persia, India, Egypt, and Ethiopia, many of which never heard of Rome's audacious claim until this millennium. We will establish exactly when that claim was first asserted, and how other churches reacted at that time. First, though, we need to look at an astonishing fact I discovered during my research for this book. The Roman Catholic Church has been fighting and losing the battle for papal primacy in back rooms, out of the public eye. So that ends the first chapter. The chapter 2 is called First Round Knockout, where I explain that they have kindly lost the battle already in back rooms. I'll try to do another one again, unless my daughter tells me that this one's so terrible that I shouldn't try it. Anyway, thank you for listening. I suspect that even on YouTube Live, you can you can subscribe and click the little bell so that you can be notified of new videos. Most of them are better than this. And maybe I'll practice the first chapter again and read it back through after I've practiced and worked on my pronunciation of anathematization. Thank you, and hope to see you again.